Hello YouTube! I just finished reading the Selection series by KIERA CASS and I loved it, so I am going to do a review for you right now, and I'm just going to talk about all three books at once because I read them all so fast that they all blend together in my brain. So, these books were recommended to me and I thought they were going to be like a guilty pleasure kind of read. I thought that they were going to be like back when I read the Gossip Girl books. Fun, but not like the most substantial. I was totally wrong. I really like these books. I know some people think that they're sort of shallow, but I think those people either didn't read them or were missing the point, or maybe were too hung up on how much romance there was, because there was so much more going on in these books and I loved it. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. These books are about a world that is divided by a caste system, and so people are separated into different tiers. There are the ones, that's like the royal family, there are the twos that are like the guards and celebrities, and so on and so forth, separating people into these different categories based on their wealth and power and their professions. I couldn't really shake the Community Meow Meow Beans episode parallel there, because that's one of my favorite episodes of Community, and anytime someone was referred to by their number, I just thought about that and it made me laugh. In this world, they're living in what was America, but was overthrown when this man named Gregory Ilya founded the Kingdom of Ilya and brought the monarchy to the country. And now there's a king and a queen and a prince, and that's just the way life works. But people seem to like be kind of okay, especially it was interesting the main character, America, is a singer. It's her last name, Singer, also. And she seems really happy with performing and being an artist, and she loves her family, and there's obviously the normal amount of unrest. And so when she finds out about the selection, which is this thing that happens when the prince is old enough that he needs to start looking for a wife, and they decide to round up 35 women from across the nation to come and be guests at the palace for the Bachelor style competition where the prince will choose a wife. Obviously, you know at this point that things are going to change for America and that she's obviously going to be part of it because she's in a pretty dress on the cover. I really like the idea of the selection. I know this is the part that makes the books seem shallow because it seems like this is going to be some sort of medieval reality show, but I think that the intentions behind the selection are really good. So the idea is that the royal bloodline stays going because the males stay and become king. Princesses are given to other countries for alliances, I believe. And the new princess is not chosen from other royal families from other countries, but instead found among commoners in their own country as a way to bring the influence and the perspective from the commoners into the palace. And I think this is wonderful, and I think that it's proven how wonderful it is by seeing what a beautiful beacon of wonderfulness Queen Amberly is. She's just patient and kind, and you can tell at multiple points throughout the book that she sees herself still in these girls in the selection because she was once one of them. She was once, I believe, a 4, and so she's been there and she knows what it's like to suffer and all of that. I'm getting sort of to the point where I'm gonna have to start spoiling things, so if you haven't read the books, you might want to stop watching now-ish. There's your warning. I love the way that women are portrayed in this book. I love how kind and unwavering Queen Amberly is. I love the way that the ladies of the selection are treated in the palace. They're guests and they're respected, and even when ones are sent home, the losers are still very highly regarded and respected. They go on to be powerful, influential women in their own lives. They usually end up marrying very well and usually stay really good friends with the queen, and I think that that's just so refreshing. I really loved that about this book. I also love that this wasn't portrayed like reality TV at all. There were cameras around, and sometimes that was frustrating, and America struggled with the idea of people invading on her privacy. Oftentimes the cameras were just there to show the kingdom the process of selecting the new queen, and most people loved and respected and were excited to welcome in a new queen, and so it was never really malicious. They never really used the cameras to purposefully make the girls look bad. The only person who ever really did that, aside from Celeste, was the king, and so I did love that it was a very respectful process. I loved America's constant thread through the novel of needing to stay true to herself. It was unfortunate that Aspen used the "I never thought they'd change you" jab to sort of get under her skin a few times. But she really did stay true to herself, and she fought for that constantly, and I loved it. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I haven't even really talked about the characters yet. Let's talk about America's family. Her father was amazing. I love the relationship between her and her father. I love the relationship between her and her siblings. I loved her happy, simple relationship with her sister. I loved that she recognized Jared's need for something beyond what their caste could offer him, which gave her just a little bit more of that fighting spirit that maybe the casts weren't the best way to run the country. I loved Maxon. I just loved how America had written him off. I loved how she had just decided he was this stuffy loser and she didn't have any desire to get to know him, and just like immediately that turned upside down. Every possibility that Maxon had to break down the preconceived notions that America had of him, he basically did. And even though he had his faults too, he was just so good. I also loved how he not only asked before he did anything with any of the girls. The amount to which he was offended when America assumed that he was gonna force himself on her was just so great, because not only was that not his intention, but like it almost made him uncomfortable because he was so young and inexperienced. And I think that honestly, I talk a lot about like needing good female role models in books, but I think a guy like Maxon is a great role model to a guy. And I don't know if a lot of guys are gonna read books with girls in dresses on the cover, but I wish they would, because I think that Maxon is a really, really stand-up dude. Like I just love that scene so much. It was just so powerful and so important. I'll talk about Aspen. Right away, I liked when America snuck away to the treehouse, and I liked the urgency of their relationship and how sneaky and daring it was. But the second that you knew that she was going to enter the selection, that sort of fell apart for me. And the way that he acted when he told her that they couldn't be together, it was so much of his pride getting in the way of what they both wanted. It was just very unattractive. I know he was trying to be the hero there, but it was just, he crushed her. He broke her. And the fact that he tried to run after her as she's leaving for the selection, like, too late, buddy. Too late. So I liked in the selection that the issue was her adjusting to this and deciding whether or not she wanted to stay, because she hated it and she wanted to go home, but then she had this great deal worked out with Maxon where she was sort of advising him and being his friend, because she never really had a friend. She had a lover. She didn't really have a friend. And so I loved that her friendship with Maxon was what led her to actually realizing what it would mean to have feelings for him and what an actual relationship was like, because it really was just this secret hidden thing, and what she had with Maxon was so much more real, and they had to work toward it, and I loved it. So I liked that in this book her dilemma was deciding whether or not this was something that she actually cared enough to throw herself into. The elite was a little more frustrating because while she had decided that she wanted to be there, this book was all about her choosing between the two boys, and that was just so frustrating to me. I truly, truly loved that in the first book, Maxon asks America if there's any way that she could feel love for him, and she says no. You could tell that he already cares for her. At the end of this book, when he asks her the same question, her answer has changed and it's now yes. I feel like if you have gotten to a point where you can love someone else in a competition where the prize is marrying him, then why would you not choose that? Like, I understand that there was a lot more to consider. Did she want to be the princess? Was it compromising herself to blah blah blah? But just the amount of trouble that she had choosing between Maxon and Aspen was just so frustrating. And so this book was a little tedious at times. There was so much flip-flopping, and I just hated that it was these big events happening that kept pulling her in each direction. Like, oh my god, that scene at the Halloween party when everything was perfect and she actually said something along the lines of, you know, there's nothing big enough to ruin this moment or to take this away. I just knew. Authors don't do things like that if they're not gonna just pull it all out from under your feet. Like the next page. I actually put the book down for a second because I just knew. I just knew that nothing good was gonna happen. And then sure enough, when I picked it back up and turned the page, what should happen but freaking Marley and Carter being found and getting caned and her just like flying off the handle, which I understand. That would shake a person up. But man, the amount of times that she just didn't trust him. I think a lot of her mistrust in Maxon came from her own lack of self-confidence. Most of the times that she didn't trust him was because she just felt like she couldn't ever actually measure up or be as good as the other competition and all of that. God, I just wish she'd had a little bit more faith in him. Like, the whole point of this book was that Maxon and Aspen, for the most part, had this just like rock hard faith in her, and both just cared about her and waited for her, and she just didn't trust him for so long. I actually really appreciated when he finally told her, I love you, or I guess he didn't say I love you because that was a whole other issue, but he said, you know, I want this between us, but it's like the trust in you that I don't have. And I think she was like, what? But like, come on, America, you acted like an idiot over and over again. How could that even be surprising to you? I was really happy when we got to the one and she finally decided, and I was worried that it was going to take a lot more of the book to decide, but she decided very early on. that her heart was with Maxon and that she was gonna fight for it. She still did a lot of really stupid things and never learned her lesson about those things, but I was just glad that she finally knew what she was gonna do. But even after she made her decision, she continued to wear that stupid button. Like, I understand that Aspen is always gonna be an important part of her life and all of that, but when you have decided to give your heart to the prince in a place where all eyes are on you and you are trying to gain his trust, don't wear a button from your ex-boyfriend. Just don't do it. Put the button in the jar with the penny, put the whole thing in your closet. You can keep it, but it doesn't need to be on your bedside and on your wrist. What is wrong with you, woman? And actually, you know, for as good as Maxon was, I did appreciate that he had a couple of flaws. He had his short temper and he didn't like being bossed around, but I also loved over the course of the one that he kept just getting the slightly hardened look, a little bit of like suspicion, jealousy when he started to notice these things. But he, unlike America, believed in her so fully that he just couldn't let himself even think that possibly she was hiding something like this from him. And I was actually kind of glad when he found out. He obviously overreacted and almost threw everything away, but like rightfully so, because honestly there were a few little points in this novel where I wasn't totally rooting for America. Even though I know that their love was true and would be great if they could get through their bullshit, she just was not grateful for what she had. The fact that she ever met Aspen at the castle, the fact that she ever let him kiss her, the fact that she ever met him anywhere was just foolish and inconsiderate and naive, and it made me so angry. America is a good person, and she did a lot of good. She did a lot of good for the people. She never backed down to the king, even when sometimes it was stupid of her not to. And ultimately, I do feel that she will make a very, very good queen. But she did a lot of stupid stuff to get there. I would have loved to know so much more about the Northern Rebels. I would have loved to get to spend more time with August and Georgia, especially when we found out that Chris and America's father were part of the Northern Rebels. I was like, yes, finally, we're gonna find out more about this. And then we just didn't. And so that was a little disappointing because I think that there was something really interesting going on in this world. I love getting the backstory about Gregory Ilya and finding out more about his diaries and that he sold his daughter off, and all of the stuff was so interesting. I just wanted a little bit more. I really did like the things that America did that were helpful and useful. I really liked that she invited Nicoletta and Georgia as her guests to that tea party, and I loved the whole conversation when she orchestrated getting the money from Italy to get the weapons for the Northern Rebels. That was one of the first times that I really saw princess qualities in her. Another time I saw it was when she went home for her father's funeral, and she really put Coda in his place. Coda was just a loser. That scene in the women's room when Queen Amberly makes them all come together and break down their walls and really have a girls' day, and it ends in the photo shoot, and then from here on out they're all really good friends. Just something like so important, I think, in reminding girls that you're not always competing against each other for everything, that you need each other and you understand each other and you need to be there for each other. But let's talk about the ending. I liked it. I was really worried because a lot of people told me that the ending made them cry or that they didn't like the ending, but I liked it. It was so frustrating the way it came out about Aspen and Maxon. I know that she had sort of dug herself too deep to really tell Maxon, oh, by the way, that boyfriend of mine was just this guy right here that's been here the whole time. I wonder how it would have been different if she'd have been able to just tell him and not have him walk up with her embracing him. Like, why was she even embracing him? He had walked in on them in bed together, and all she had to do was be like, sorry. I don't know. I don't know why she was embracing him. That made me super angry. I don't say I completely blame Maxon for his rash decisions. All these things that he'd been putting off believing because he had so much faith in America seemed to be coming true, and it just was too much for him. I mean, this was at the point where I had no idea what was going to happen because the king wasn't going to let them get married, and Maxon didn't even want to marry her anymore, and she was just sitting there humiliated, and then the Southern rebels attack, and it's crazy, and it was so upsetting when Celeste was shot, and everything's crazy, and you think Maxon's died, and I just loved the scene where America's in that little safe room just like shooting at the lock and doesn't even realize that she's used all the bullets until it's too late. It was all just like fast and crazy and like muddled, but I feel like that's how something like that would be. I don't know. And so it ends with the wedding and Aspen being the one to give her away, and it's all symbolic and great and all of that. And then she marries Maxon and it's wonderful and everyone's sort of happy, but the king and queen are dead, which was a little bit convenient, but also very tragic. The one thing that really bothered me about the ending was the epilogue. I was just really displeased with the epilogue. I was so excited when I saw that there was an epilogue because the book ended so abruptly, because I imagined that this epilogue was going to be probably like a year into the future, with America and Maxon having a conversation about some policy that they're talking about or something they're going to do about the war or whatever, and then it was going to, you know, give you a little bit of glimpse into the changes that they've already made together as king and queen, and then also hopefully have some sweet moment of showing their relationship and how it's grown now that they can totally trust each other and all of that. And the fact that the epilogue was just a scene with Aspen and Lucy that we probably could have just imagined on our own. Like, we didn't need that. We didn't really need that. It wasn't even in the future. It was a conversation that they had before the ending of the actual book. So I just thought that that was a little unnecessary, and I felt like we were robbed a glimpse of the future of the new king and queen of Ilia. Because I don't even know, this whole attack thing that happened during the ceremony, did they kill all the southern rebels? Did they just hold these particular ones back? Are they still attacking? Like, what are they gonna do now? The book just sort of ended in the middle of a war without resolving it, and so that was strange. Really glad that Maxon didn't die. I'm also really glad that America didn't die. I'm happy that after all of that trouble and struggle, they get to be together and be happy. And that the kingdom will hopefully be better, and the Italians will sure be happy. These are my thoughts about the book. I loved it. These characters have permanently cemented themselves in my heart. And they've earned their place on my shelf, and I give it like a 9. I give it like a 9 out of 10, which is really high for a book that, you know, was a little more fluffy than deep, but I think those are important sometimes, just to read a really good emotional book that takes you on a journey. So thank you guys for watching. This has been my first review. Hope you guys liked it. I'll see you next time.